Get ready, because today we're going to break down character arcs, flaws, and lies, and hopefully we'll clear up all the confusion surrounding them. By the way, my name is Brandon McNulty. I'm the author of Bad Parts, and welcome to my writing channel. One of my subscribers asked me to do an in-depth video on character flaws, so today we're going to break down everything. Flaws, lies, and how they contribute to character arcs. We'll start by defining what each of these is, then we'll examine the three main types of character arcs, then we'll look at 5 reasons why there's so much confusion surrounding these ideas, and finally we'll wrap up the video by discussing a simple, straightforward approach to understanding how arcs, flaws, and lies work. Here's your spoiler warning for today. The ones in red contain the heaviest spoilers. Let's start off by getting all the pieces on the table. First, we'll answer the question, what is a character arc? And it's a personal journey of transformation that a character experiences over the course of a story. In other words, a character changes for better or for worse. Or in some cases, a character may change the people around them for better or worse. Usually the protagonist has the most important arc, and that's the arc you want to focus on while building a story. Side characters and antagonists may have arcs of their own, but focusing on the protagonist's arc will often enable those other arcs to naturally fall into place. Now, some people have trouble identifying character arcs. The easiest way to tell if a transformation occurs is by looking at the story's starting and ending points. Think of them as before and after snapshots. Then ask the question, has an important character undergone meaningful change? If so, the story contains a character arc. But remember, arcs don't just instantly happen. It's a process. Characters grow in the middle of the story. They grow as they face conflict, overcome obstacles, make meaningful choices, and so on and so on. And what ultimately determines their arc is how they struggle with their flaws and their lies. And that brings us to the next question, which is, what is a character flaw? This is a negative behavior, a habit, a trait, a reaction that prevents a character from being happy. Things like selfishness, recklessness, cowardice, addiction, greed, fear of failure. These are all examples of character flaws. Flaws are important because they're weaknesses that make characters complex and relatable. They also create conflict and setbacks, and they steer the plot in surprising directions. Keep in mind that the opposite of a flaw is a strength. So in order to change for the better, a protagonist might start with a flaw and grow toward a strength. For example, if you have a character who engages in greedy behavior, they would grow by embracing the strength of being charitable. In my Bad versus Good rom-coms video, I talked about how in the movie Groundhog Day, Phil Connors has the flaw of being self-absorbed. He's a total jerk, and over the course of the story, he grows toward the strength of selflessness. This allows him to complete his arc and live a happy life. All right, now let's answer the question, what is a character lie? It's a negative, misguided belief that a character holds about themselves or about the world around them. Something like, I'm not worthy of love, or success is more important than friendship, or people only respect you if you have tons of money. And of course, there are plenty of other possibilities. It's worth pointing out that the lie is often the result of backstory events. It might be a single major event or a series of smaller events that ends up hammering the lie into the character's head. Keep in mind that although these events are often traumatic or negative, you can also have neutral or even positive experiences that lead a character to believe a lie. If a character does believe a lie, they're going to be miserable or unfulfilled until they learn to embrace its opposite truth. For an example of a lie, let's look at Harry Potter. In book 1, he believes that he isn't special or worthy of love. That's his lie, and he believes it because he grew up in an environment where he was treated horribly by his aunt and uncle. Over the course of the story, however, he learns that he is special, and he finds love by developing strong friendships with Ron and Hermione. Ultimately, Harry learns to reject the lie and accept a new truth, and he becomes a happier person because of it. Okay, now let's talk about the 3 types of arcs. These are analyzed in great detail in K.M. Whalen's book, Creating Character Arcs. I've recommended this book several times on the channel before, but if you haven't read it yet, I'll link to it in the description below. Anyway, the first type of arc is the positive change arc. This is an arc where a character believes a lie, but grows to accept a truth by the end of the story. This is the most common type of arc. It's the type that Harry Potter undergoes in the example I just gave you, and it's the most popular arc because audiences love to see people changing for the better. For another example, in the movie Rocky, Rocky Balboa starts off believing he's a bum, and by the end of the movie, he believes that he's worthy of respect and love. Now, between the start and end of the movie, he faces conflict, he makes mistakes, overcomes obstacles, and he engages in a number of actions and decisions that get him from point A to point B. And that's what makes makes his positive change arc so meaningful and convincing. The second type of arc is the flat arc. This is an arc where a character believes a truth and attempts to teach that truth to the world around them. Over the course of the story, the character should be challenged and even tempted by the lie, and that's what keeps things interesting. For example, in Return of the Jedi, Luke believes that the peaceful, non-violent way of the Jedi is what will bring order to the galaxy. Luke is challenged throughout the story, and at times, peaceful negotiations don't get the job done. Now, his main goal is to convince Darth Vader to return to the light side, but Vader repeatedly rejects the idea. It's not until the very end that Luke finally convinces him by sticking to his belief, even in the face of death. This is what compels Vader to change, while also completing Luke's flat arc. Finally, the third type of character arc is the negative change arc. This is an arc where a character initially believes a truth, but later embraces a lie. K.M. Wayland also says there are other variations on this negative arc, but for the sake of simplicity, we'll say that a negative change involves a shift from truth to lie. For example, in The Godfather, Michael Corleone initially believes that living an honest life is more important than achieving power.
That's my family, Kay. It's not me.
However, Michael's need for control drives him to abandon that truth in favor of embracing the lie that achieving power is what's most important. As a result, he becomes the ruthless head of a crime family, and his personal relationships suffer. Okay, next we're going to talk about why character arcs, flaws, and lies are so confusing. The first reason is that flaws and lies can be hard to identify. When we look at some of our favorite characters, a flaw or lie may not be instantly noticeable, or they may be hard to pin down. For instance, Sarah Connor is one of the most iconic characters in film history, and she definitely changes in both Terminator movies. But if someone were to ask you what her flaw and lie are in the first movie, you might have to stop and think. As I mentioned earlier in the video, the trick to analyzing a character arc is to look at the before and after. When we first meet her, she's an everyday waitress. Then at the end of the first movie, she's pregnant with humanity's savior, and she's preparing to do whatever it takes to stop Skynet. So it's clear that she changes. Now, early on, her flaw and lie don't exactly leap out at us. I would say that her flaw is that she lacks drive and discipline. We see this when she shows up late for work and struggles to keep her customers happy, and then later on, during a conversation with Kyle Reese, Sarah even admits out loud that she's not tough or organized. But by the end of the movie, she transforms into someone who's focused, someone who recognizes her purpose, and is prepared to do whatever needs to be done. As for Sarah's lie, it's that she believes herself to be powerless. We see this because she's working a dead-end job, she gets stood up by the guy she's dating, and when she starts getting hunted, she has to rely on others for help. But over the course of her journey, she learns to make decisions, build weapons, and develop into the powerful leader she needs to become. Her lie may not be clever or original, but it fits a story where she's being chased by an invincible killing machine. Second reason for confusion is that flaws and lies often overlap. This is because flaws and lies both lead to unhappiness, and they often work in tandem to make a character miserable. In fact, sometimes a flaw and lie can be basically the same thing. For instance, in Groundhog Day, Phil Connors engages in self-centered behavior, that's his flaw, and he also believes he's better than everyone, which is of course a self-centered worldview. We see a similar case in Star Wars with Han Solo. His flaw is that he's self-centered, and his lie is that there's no cause worth risking his life for. Those are pretty much the same thing, and when he overcomes one, he overcomes both. Although you can argue that his flaw remains after the first movie. And that brings us to the third reason why character arcs are so confusing. It's that lies are typically conquered while flaws may persist. This is most common in a series where we see a character like Harry Potter or Luke Skywalker giving into a flaw of impulsiveness, even though they've overcome lies about their personal worth. If you are writing a trilogy or series, it's best to have characters grow in terms of their beliefs, but flaws can stick around. So in the case of Harry and Luke, they grow by learning lessons, but they still give in to their human weaknesses again and again. Not only does this keep them relatable, but it also creates conflict and setbacks that keep the story interesting. Fourth reason for confusion is that flaws can create lies, and lies can create flaws. This goes back to how the two ideas overlap. One can create the other, like if a character believes believes the lie that money is the only path to happiness. If they believe that lie, they might develop a flaw like gambling addiction, and then that can create all sorts of problems. It can destroy them and their relationships while they're chasing that lie of being happy by making money. Then you also have scenarios where flaws create lies. Godzilla Minus One is a great example of this. The movie opens up at the end of World War II, and it introduces us to a kamikaze pilot named Shikishima who pretends that his plane has mechanical issues in order to ditch the war. His flaw is cowardice, and when Godzilla attacks the island where his plane is being serviced, Shikishima is urged to use his gun to kill the beast. Instead of doing so, he surrenders to his flaw of cowardice, and his friends end up slaughtered. As a result, he develops the belief that he should be dead, and this lie haunts him throughout the story. Finally, the fifth reason for confusion is that it can be tricky to identify which type of arc a character has. Sometimes it's hard to determine whether a character has a positive change arc, a flat arc, a negative arc, or no arc at all. This debate pops up a lot when people discuss Indiana Jones. Some argue that he has a positive change arc because he learns to believe in the supernatural or because he learns to value Marion more than ancient artifacts. Others argue that he has a flat arc. They say that he spends the entire movie holding the belief that artifacts should be studied and understood rather than used as weapons. Then you have people who argue that Indy has no arc at all, that there's no belief at stake, that he's just an adventurer seeking treasure and fighting Nazis. Personally, I believe Indy undergoes a positive change arc, and you can see this by looking at where his story starts and ends. At the beginning, he's obsessed with obtaining treasure, and we learn that his relationship with his mentor, who's Marion's father, turned sour years earlier. By the end of the movie, he embraces the truth that Marion is his greatest treasure, and he's happier for it. He's able to move on even when the arc gets taken away from him. Alright, now before we wrap up this video, I want to simplify things a bit, get everything in order. We talked about a lot today. First thing to keep in mind here, when you are writing character arcs, remember they involve transformation, whether it means changing oneself or changing other people around you. And change means shifting from negative to positive or positive to negative. And remember that meaningful change requires that characters are challenged to rethink their beliefs. Second thing to keep in mind is that flaws and lies can be two independent concepts, or they can overlap. If you want to keep them separate, think of flaws as negative behaviors, while lies are negative beliefs. Remember that flaws harm characters when they take action, while lies shape a character's worldview and their attitude toward life. Third thing to keep in mind is that overcoming or succumbing to a lie is critical to a character arc. That brings us to the fourth thing. Fourth thing is that overcoming or succumbing to a flaw is optional, especially if you're writing a series where a flaw may persist as a personal weakness that makes a character feel human. If you're writing a standalone story, however, the character's arc will have more impact if they overcome both the flaw and the lie. And finally, we'll end on this. When crafting your character arcs, always remember the before and after snapshots. If you think about these two things, they will help keep your story and your characters focused, and from there you can just fill in the details, bridging the gap between beginning and end. So I hope this helps. Question of the day: what is your favorite character's flaw, and what is their lie? Let us know in the comments section below. Thank you for watching. If you want to support the channel, please pick up a copy of any one of my books and be sure to leave reviews on Amazon. Bad Parts is great if you like small town horror. It's about people trading away their sick and injured body parts in order to get healthy again. And also, if you want to support the channel, like, share, and subscribe. Check out my other videos, tell other people about it. And as always, remember to keep on writing.